Brian Kelly updates injuries to Braelin Moore and Trey'Dez Green and what the Tigers do without him. It's Locked on LSU. Here we go.
You are Locked on LSU, your daily podcast on the LSU Tigers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Okay, let's get it. It is Locked on LSU, your team every day. I'm your host, Matt Moscona. Thanks so much for making us your first listen. We are free, available wherever you get great podcasts, of course, on YouTube as well. So please subscribe. And as always, one of the fastest ways to help us grow is by leaving your comments below. So thank you sincerely for that. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Football season is here. Visit the FanDuel app today and start planning your futures bets now. Brian Kelly met with reporters on Monday to recap Louisiana Tech and start to look ahead to Florida. And there is no more imperative conversation that Brian Kelly could have had than injury updates on two starters in Braelin Moore and Trey'Dez Green. So I want to let you hear what Brian Kelly said, not only the injury update there, but also what the Tigers' plan is potentially without those two guys. Also have to talk about the possibility of LSU maybe incorporating a few more explosive plays into this offense. We're going to get to that here on today's episode. But let us begin with what is absolutely the most imperative part of this week and moving forward. It's injury updates to Trey'Dez Green and center Braelin Moore.
MRIs, were positive. We didn't get the true sense that we have a high ankle sprain with Braelin. There was nothing that gave us that sense that when we looked at the MRI that, hey, this is a tightrope procedure and he's going to be out for, 4 weeks. He's going to be day to day. We'll get him out there tomorrow. We'll see how he feels. He felt better today. So I think we're going to list him as questionable, and that could change to probable as we go through the week. We'll see how he progresses. Trey'Dez has a sprain. The good news is it's a sprained MCL. And so, as you know, those are injuries that you can come back from, and rather quickly. We'll see where he is. We'll list him as questionable and work our way through the week and see where he is at the end of the week.
Okay, so both Braelin Moore and Trey'Dez Green officially listed as questionable. Brian Kelly not acknowledging that the two will miss this week's game. It makes a lot of sense. Let the week play out, see how it goes. I will stand on the information that I got Saturday night and then confirmed to me Sunday morning, which is both Braelin Moore and Trey'Dez Green likely will not play this week against Florida. And if they do not play against Florida, it stands to reason you wouldn't bring them back for a game against FCS Southeastern Louisiana. You might as well give them more rest so that way they could be as close to 100% when you travel to Oxford 2 weeks from Saturday to take on Ole Miss. And then in that instance, it would be 3 weeks, 21 days from injury against Louisiana Tech to playing against Ole Miss, gives them more time to heal. I think that's probably a more appropriate timeline, but crazy things happen. And these guys will get treatment, and you got state-of-the-art trainers and physicians taking care of these guys at state-of-the-art facilities. And if they can somehow accelerate healing and get these guys ready to play, awesome. You'd love to have them against Florida rather than not. But I do think what's so interesting is how, with the news on Braelin Moore, a lot of the conversation with Brian Kelly on Monday became, what do you do potentially without Braelin Moore? And so he was asked this question, kind of point blank, about, what are you missing without Braelin Moore? And listen to what Brian Kelly says, because he actually flips this question instead of what they miss and focus on what they have.
We saw what he did in game one, and he played very well. He was SEC Player of the Week. A lot of people felt that way too, and we did, certainly. We're just fortunate that we have another player that can step in and do a really good job for us. And DJ started 13 games last year. For him to come in on the second play and be mentally ready to do it. And I think that's a really big thing. Some guys mentally have a hard time not starting and not being in the game. And then when you put them in, it's hard for them to be in that performance mindset, right? They've been sitting around. And he's unique in that way. He's mature. He can step in. So I think this really says a lot more about what we know we have with Braelin Moore was on display against Clemson. And then what we saw this past weekend is that we have a number 2 who can play as a number 1. And that's a really good asset.
I think that is absolutely a valuable asset. And I want to illustrate this. So DJ Chester has become a convenient punching bag for fans because he did not play well last year. I think objectively, he was your weakest link on your starting offensive line. And that's not a great stretch. You had 4 players drafted. One of them was the 4th overall pick in Will Campbell. Emory Jones is a 3-year starter. Frazier and Dellinger were seniors who had started for 5 and 4 years respectively. So a guy starting at a different position that he hadn't played before for the first time being your weak link, I don't think is a great stretch. But what I will say is DJ Chester has played in his career nearly 1,100 snaps. Okay, that's on the offensive line, nearly just under 1,100 snaps. If it wasn't Chester, Cohen Eccles would likely play center. Cohen Eccles has exactly 100 snaps. DJ Chester has played 11 times the amount of snaps as the next guy. So, I would also look and say, if you look, and I know we lean on Pro Football Focus here sometimes, especially when we're talking about the offensive line. DJ Chester's season-long grade a year ago in 2024 was a 49.5. Okay, remember, like 90s are off the charts, 80s, you're a really good starter, 70s, a very solid grade, 60s is acceptable, 50s, you start to have issues. DJ Chester's season-long grade last year overall was a 49.5. That is not good at all for a starter in the SEC at a place like LSU. When you look at Chester against Tech, his grade was a 63.2. His pass block grade was an 82.5. His run block grade was a 60.5. I'm not telling you do backflips over a 63. What I'm telling you is a year ago, his season grade was a 49. He goes in against Tech and was dramatically improved. As a matter of fact, he was your second highest rated offensive lineman behind only Tyree Adams, and they were 5th and 6th offensively in the game against Tech. So you're talking about a guy that's played 1,100 snaps, that's been on the road at Florida. He's been on the road at Kyle Field. He made his first start in Las Vegas at an NFL stadium against USC. He's been at home against Bama. He's been in the bowl game. He's been in big-time key moments against future NFL players. None of that is new to him, which makes DJ Chester a very valuable asset. I'm not banging the drum telling you this guy is going to be an All-American. What I'm telling you is, and yes, obviously there's a drop-off from Braelin Moore. Braelin Moore was the SEC, Brian Kelly just said, he was the offensive lineman of the week against Clemson. He was a guy that, even though you had a player in Chester who had started 13 games at center, you went into the portal and got Braelin Moore because you wanted to upgrade that position. So objectively, Braelin Moore is a much better player. I'm not arguing that. But what I'm saying is, isn't it a good thing to have a guy that's basically started 14 games in his career, who's been in key moments, who can step in and replace Braelin Moore? And that's something Brian Kelly underscored, was just how important DJ Chester is to this team.
DJ Chester starting at center, if he has to start, we're very comfortable with him. I thought he did a nice job. 3 downs hard because you got somebody on your nose, right on top of you, and you're snapping the ball in shotgun situations. Look, to have a guy like him is invaluable, right? I mean, he didn't take a ton of snaps the last couple of weeks at center. We had him out at left tackle. He's played guard. He's so valuable, and he went in there and he did a heck of a job.
When Tyree Adams went down against Clemson for a brief time, DJ Chester went in at left tackle. I mean, do you remember in fall camp, it was Carius Kern playing left tackle, and then they kicked Carius Kern over to right tackle to try to push Weston Davis there. But you get into a game situation on the road at Clemson, and a guy who's never played left tackle in a game steps in right there for Tyree Adams. Again, I'm not sitting here trying to pump DJ Chester as an All-American, but yes, that's a valuable piece. It's a guy with a ton of experience that you feel can play anywhere on the line, and you'll put him in a moment, and he can deliver for you like he did against Louisiana Tech. So absolutely, I want Braelin more healthy and starting for LSU. But I want Braelin more healthy and starting for LSU all season. And if that means you hold him out against Florida and you hang your hat on DJ Chester at center against Florida and Southeastern Louisiana to get Braelin more healthy against Ole Miss so he can play the remainder of the season, I think that's a pretty obvious decision to make. Now, the other injury was Trey'Dez Green, and we'll get an update there and how they might replace him as we continue Locked on LSU, your team every day. Time to fuel up and turn it up with 5-Hour Energy Transfusion. This grape, ginger, and lime flavored shot brings the iconic taste of a golf course favorite to a non-alcoholic boost. Perfect for sinking birdies or making great memories with friends. It's a hole-in-one for your energy game. Whether you're out on the course or you just need a little extra push to power through your day, 5-Hour Energy Transfusion delivers the clubhouse flavor you love without ever leaving the green. The wildest shot I've ever made, be it a total fluke or not, hold at U Club, hold out from about 40 feet away. Great chip on a difficult course. Golf is all about good times with good people and good flavors. The grape ginger lime flavor of 5-Hour Energy Transfusion gives you the best part of your clubhouse go-to without leaving the course or chasing down the beverage cart. Now you can amp up the fun even more. Just buy, snap, and enter for a chance to win a dream golf trip for two to any golf tournament in the USA. Tee up that trip. Visit 5hewin.com for full rules and entry. No purchase necessary. Excludes Masters Tournament. Ends October 31st, 2025. Today's show is also brought to you by FanDuel. The NFL season is here, and FanDuel is making sure you're ready for kickoff with a can't-miss offer. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. I love using FanDuel because it fits however you like to bet. Player props, building a same-game parlay, even jumping in live as the action unfolds. It's quick, easy, and the best way to add a little more energy to your Sundays. So, are you ready to play? Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com to place your first $5 bet. So we've talked about what LSU could potentially be missing in Braelin Moore. Well, Brian Kelly also talked about how they might go about replacing Trey'Dez Green.
Bauer Sharp is going to have to play. We hope that Trey'Dez plays. We're not sure yet. We'll let the week kind of dictate that. But we're better positioned. Donovan Green is an experienced player that can step in and give us the things that we need. And look, I mean, I think at the end of the day, we all know it's not one player. Would we like him there? Yeah, we hope he's playing on Saturday. But if he's not, we'll be prepared to make adjustments.
The most obvious thing that Trey'Dez Green gives you is a gigantic target in the red zone. And that's something that you're going to hear in just a second that Brian Kelly is continuing to default to this week. So I'm going to circle back to that. So don't lose that thought, okay? Remember, Trey'Dez, red zone, remember that because I'm going to circle back to it. Now, Bauer Sharp is your prototype tight end that Brian Kelly wants. He is the replacement for Mason Taylor. He is 6'5", 250 pounds. He's rock solid. He is good in the blocking game as a physical player, and he's athletic enough to catch passes and be effective in the pass catching game. He was targeted. He led the team in targets against Clemson, 5 catches on 8 targets. And quite honestly, he was a toe scrape away from having 6 catches and one of the best balls of the night on the sideline ball where he caught it and just barely couldn't get his foot down. So you know and feel comfortable that you can affect the game against Florida with Bauer Sharp in the passing game. Brian Kelly also mentioned there Donovan Green, and I wouldn't sleep on Donovan Green. He has already played a good bit for this team, and I know most of it has been when LSU has gone into 3 tight end sets when they want him blocking. He has played so far 24 snaps on the season, and primarily he's been in there as a blocker. He's not been asked to pass block yet, but on 14 of his 24 snaps, he's been asked to run block, and then on 8 of those snaps, he's been asked to to be a receiver, a pass catcher. I want to remind you, when Donovan Green was recruited to Texas A&M, he was a 4-star in the class of 2022. In the composite, he was the number 105 player nationally, and he was the 4th best tight end in the country. He picked A&M over Alabama, and he had offers from Arizona State and Auburn and Arkansas, Baylor, Colorado, Florida, Florida State, Georgia, Georgia Tech. I mean, he had offers from LSU for a ton of schools, but he committed to Jimbo Fisher. Jimbo Fisher got fired. Mike Elko came in and had a different plan for how to use the tight end position. And so Donovan Green wasn't a fit. So he enters the transfer portal, comes to LSU. All of that to say, I believe after Bauer Sharp leaves this year, and I understand fully that you went and signed J.D. LaFleur in the most recent signing class, and you're still looking for another tight end in the 2026 class. You brought in Donovan Green to be the guy that next year is this year's Bauer Sharp, to be the next Mason Taylor, to be that guy. You're the prototype tight end. So if you need Donovan Green to take on an increased workload in the offense, I fully believe he's ready, capable, and able to do that. And he offers kind of something different at 6'4", 250 pounds, where they have him listed right now. You're talking about a guy that can absolutely give you a physicality in the running game and also athleticism in the pass catching game. So don't sleep on the possibility of Donovan Green getting an increased workload while Trey'Dez Green is out. Now, I mentioned red zone, and I think it's so interesting that sometimes, and maybe this is just a product of me spending my career sitting in press conferences, and you learn to pick up on things. And it's not an intuition. It's just an experience thing of sitting in press conferences and learning how coaches, and every coach approaches media availability different, how coaches explain things, and you tend to pick up on nuance. And so when a coach is asked about one thing and somewhere along the answer, they tell you a totally different thing, it's because that's what they have in their mind that they actually see as important. So, for example, Brian Kelly was asked a question on Monday about Florida a season ago having so much success against LSU on their defensive line. Remember, this was the game a season ago in Gainesville where Florida sacked Garrett Nussmeier 7 times and had 11 tackles for loss. The Florida defensive front wrecked LSU's offensive line. That was the difference in the game. Brian Kelly was asked about that a year ago, and listen to where he took the answer.
I thought they did a really good job. I mean, their simulated pressures are really good. They had, a couple of big guys up front that we struggled a little bit with, but that's the SEC. Like, everybody's going to have really good players, and it really comes down to your focus and execution more than what Florida. And we respect the players that they have. Last year, we didn't convert. We didn't cash in when we got into opportunities to put touchdowns on the board. We field goal. We settled for field goals. So we have to score touchdowns. That was the case this weekend too, right? I mean, we get all the way down there on a drive. We're kicking field goals. We need to convert when we get into that tough territory.
Brian Kelly was asked about Florida's defensive line, and he told you they have to convert in the red zone. By the way, he's not wrong. If you remember last year, there was a play where C.J. Daniels scored on a crossing route. It was negated by a questionable offensive pass interference penalty. That stands. LSU probably wins the game. In any event, he's right. They settled for field goals, and they did it a lot last year. A season ago, LSU was 74th in the country in red zone scoring possession at 83%. They were 94th in red zone touchdowns at just 56%, meaning they got in the red zone. They got points 83% of the time, so 8 out of 10 times, but only half of their red zone possessions netted touchdowns. What you want to be at is where you score upwards of 90% of your red zone possessions, and you want roughly 75% or higher to be touchdowns. Like, that's your benchmark target. LSU wasn't close to that last year, and it's already reared its ugly head this year. You had 5 red zone possessions on Saturday, 2 touchdowns, 3 field goals. So Kelly's asked about Florida's defensive front, and he makes it about the red zone. There's another one. Brian Kelly's asked about the lack of explosive plays this year so far. The LSU has 3 explosive plays so far of 20 yards or more in the passing game so far through 2 games. That's least amount among SEC teams so far. Listen to where he took the answer when he was asked, hey, coach, how do you get more explosive plays in your offense?
We're a lot more creative relative to the running game and getting some explosive plays. I think Barry and Brown had an explosive play in the running game. Xavier had explosive. Harlem had an explosive. I think those explosive plays maybe went to the receivers last year, and you're seeing more explosive plays in the run game. We need to score more points. And I think really the issue for me more than anything else is converting in those tough territory areas and scoring touchdowns instead of field goals. I like the balance now that we have explosive receivers that can catch it, but we also can run the ball and get some explosive. We really struggled with that last year. And so where I'll really be interested in see where this thing falls is our conversion rate in the red zone. That's really where I'm focused right now, is converting in the red zone and scoring touchdowns instead of field goals.
He's asked about Florida's defensive front. He talks about converting in the red zone. He's asked about explosive plays. He talks about converting in the red zone. What do you think Brian Kelly is concerned with? Converting touchdowns in the red zone. Who was a major part of that for you as a red zone weapon? Trey'Dez Green. If you don't have him against Florida, you have to get more creative, do something different in the red zone, see what that might look like if and when the situation presents itself this Saturday against Florida. One guy who Brian Kelly mentioned there in the explosive might be in line for a few more touches. We'll talk about that next. Locked on LSU, your team every day. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. College football is back, and I couldn't be more excited. The tailgates, the rivalries, the energy in the stands, there's just nothing like it. But let's be real. Actually getting tickets can feel like more of a battle than the game itself. Endless queues, hidden fees, prices jumping at checkout. That's why I use Game Time, the app that gives the advantage back to the fans. It's the easiest way to score last-minute tickets at the best prices with no surprise fees. What you see is what you pay. I pulled up Game Time, just a couple of taps, so amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite college football games as low as $25. And honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. So take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use the code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Game Time today. Our show is also brought to you by our friends at Our Lady of the Lake, championship health partner of LSU athletics. Trust isn't given, it's earned. And just like LSU athletes earn their success, Our Lady of the Lake providers earn trust every day. As LSU's championship health partner, Our Lady of the Lake, part of the Franciscan Missionaries of Our Lady Health System, takes care of the Tigers on the field, on campus, and across Louisiana. Whether it's sports medicine, pediatrics, heart care, or helping you recover from everyday injuries, they bring championship-level commitment to every patient. You can trust the team that cares for the team you love. Our Lady of the Lake and LSU. Together, we roar. Learn more at ololrmc.com/LSU. That's ololrmc.com/LSU. So as LSU is seeking more explosive plays, Brian Kelly is right. They have gotten them in the run game. You had Harlem Berry with a 43-yard run against Louisiana Tech. You had Xavier Thomas with a 48-yard run against Louisiana Tech. Now, Barry and Brown had an explosive play. However, because he was coming in motion and it was shoveled to him, that goes down as a reception, not a run. But effectively, it was an extension of the run game. And Brian Kelly's right. They've struggled to push to complete passes downfield, even when they've had opportunities there. But they have made the explosive plays in the run game. Mentioned Harlem Berry, 5-star number 1 running back in the country. And in the second half, Berry did have that explosive 43-yard run where he showed off his flash and dash style that made him the 5-star number 1 running back in the country. Remember, in the second quarter, he also had an 11-yard touchdown run to start the drive before the end of the first half, but then he was pulled after he false started. Remember, he sort of leaned forward in his stance. Some of the growing pains you're going to have. Well, Brian Kelly was asked with his performance on Saturday, did Harlem Berry earn more touches?
He required a conversation because, look, running the football is so much more about next level and making people miss. He did a great job. He made a couple guys miss, extended a play. We knew he was talented, right? I mean, this is much more about, catching up to the system that we run, right? Protections out of the backfield, right reads, those things, but it required a conversation that this is a guy that we've got to keep an eye on.
I'm not in any way suggesting that Harlem Berry might replace Caden Durham, but I want to remind you that a year ago, Caden Durham did not play in the opener against USC. Against Nichols, he had 5 carries for 4 yards. Then against South Carolina, it was his day. He had 11 carries for 98 yards and scored twice. The Tigers come home to play UCLA. He has 6 carries for 14 yards. It just wasn't very good. And then he busted out against South Alabama. 7 carries for 128 yards. He also had 3 catches for 89, including the 71-yarder. He was awesome. He had an 86-yard run and a 71-yard reception. And from there, he became your bell cow. He was your guy the rest of the season. Again, I'm not suggesting that Harlem Berry is going to replace Caden Durham, but LSU is looking for their number 2. We've seen Xavier Thomas. We've seen Juwan Johnson. We've seen Harlem Berry. We've seen Caleb Jackson. Maybe this is the moment where Harlem Berry emerges as LSU's number 2 behind Caden Durham, something that, with a stylistic difference that could be critical for LSU in a game of this magnitude with Florida coming to LSU this weekend. Speaking of LSU and Florida this weekend, I love when we get to do crossover episodes. And you might remember a year ago when the Tigers and the Gators played, we visited with Brandon Olson of Locked On Gators. We also visited with Brandon during the offseason when LSU landed both Jack Pyburn and Jakeem Jackson out of the transfer portal. So we are planning, again, Brandon and I, to do a crossover episode that we're planning to drop on Thursday of this week with LSU and Florida. So we'll get that episode recorded and drop it. Very much looking forward to this. It's a fascinating time in Gainesville. Coming off the loss to South Florida, pressure has been ratcheted up on Billy Napier, and that's a Florida team that just flat got beat by South Florida this past weekend. So what Florida team shows up? Is it a wounded Florida team limping into Baton Rouge, or a motivated team looking to make amends for their embarrassing loss to South Florida? We'll find out as we do our crossover episode with Brandon Olson later in the week. I always love to remind you as well, it's another big moment for Locked On. College football fans, Locked On and Fire TV present College Football Kickoff, your ultimate college football weekly preview. Drake Toll of Locked On Big 12 leads the conversation alongside, two-time AP Coach of the Year Gary Patterson, former college star Jesse Holley, and Locked On's local experts. A college football preview only Locked On can do. Catch College Football Kickoff every Thursday throughout the season, only on Fire TV. That's going to do it for us here on today's episode of Locked On LSU. Thank you so much for making us your first listen every single day. If you are listening on podcast, please subscribe on your favorite podcast app. Rate us, leave a review. If you're on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell so you're notified whenever we post a new video, and let a friend know if they love the Tigers. We got you here every single day for Locked On LSU, your team every day.